Yeah, we stepped a little bit outside the French Quarter to a place called Blaine Kerns Studios, better known to a lot of visitors as Mardi Gras World. So this is one of the places that makes and displays floats. From the outside, it's pretty innocuous, apart from the branding. From the street, though, as you passed by, you'd see a giant sea god and an alligator, letting you know a little bit of the magic that's made inside. These guys are one of a few companies that do this. They're the largest one. You'll find some other smaller ones like Royal Artists that produce just a few parades. And some of the parade crews are also going to design and build their own floats. But because they're the largest one, pretty much if you ever visit during a Carnival season, you will see some Blaine Kern floats. Even if you come outside that season, there's a very good chance that a parade is going to be happening. And even if not, you can visit this spot. It's the only one of these companies that has a space open to the public all throughout the year where you can see the floats up close and personal, sometimes in a lot more detail than you'd be able to see them if you were watching the parade. And you can also watch the process of making them. These guys have actually been a big part of changing that process over time. When these guys first got into the business in 1947, when Blaine Kerns Sr. founded this company, typical floats were drawn by mules, they were built mostly out of wood, and they were decorated with painted paper mache. So they display a few of those older pieces from as early as the 1970s, built in that style. You're gonna see mostly foam fabrication going on now, so they will sculpt the basic figures out of giant blocks and sheets of styrofoam. Some of that work is done by hand, and some of it is done by a huge robot named Pixie. And then once they've made the basic shape, they're gonna cover it with a paper mache layer that allows for painting, and they're gonna finish it with another material that'll make it more long-lasting. So in that process, these guys are building hundreds of floats per year. They do it at bulk, and they do it for a lot of different crews, which have different design needs all around. The parades are all pretty different from one another, but crews have a few things in common. They, for one thing, have that word in common, which goes back to the Mystic Crew of Comus, the very first float parade that we had. And crew, since those days, is spelled K-R-E-W-E, which is a fake Old English spelling of just the word crew, C-R-E-W. And crews are social organizations that are going to do various things throughout the year, but primarily usually revolve around making a parade happen. They also are going to share in common, usually being named after some kind of idea from world religions or civilizations. And so you have the crew of Rex, the crew of Comus, sometimes drawing from Roman mythology. You're going to have the crew of Cleopatra and the crew of Isis coming from Egypt. You're going to have the crew of Zulu making African references. You have a lot of different Greek gods. And these guys were actually part of founding one particular crew. So a little more than 50 years ago, in 1968, Blaine Kerns Sr. was brought on board to design the very first run of the crew of Bacchus, the Roman god of wine and theater and partying. And Bacchus was designed around the whole idea that Mardi Gras needed to be bigger. We had a number of tourism magnates basically in town who thought that they weren't getting enough visitors to town for Mardi Gras. And so they wanted to make something flashier and more impressive that they thought y'all would like more. So they decided scale was the thing to increase, and Kern Studios provided that from day one. They started building bigger floats, and they started building them with moving parts and their own lights. And nowadays, Bacchus is one of several of what we call super crews, which are the ones with the highest production values, and they also throw by far the most stuff. So every year they're debuting new floats, but if you visit here, you can see some of their classic floats. There's a few that they use every year with occasional replacements and renovations. For example, if you came here now, you would see King Kong and Queen Kong, which are actually floats without riders. Typically, you're gonna have a few dozen riders on a float who are the ones throwing things, but parades like Bacchus throw so much stuff that sometimes they will have a special float just for throwing things back. So you may have noticed on Queen Kong, there are beads stuck all over her. And after you've had so many things thrown at you in the course of watching a parade, it's nice to do some of the throwing at the end.